Let's come on to policing issues. And Vanessa, we'll start with you and the recent efforts by the Metropolitan Police to, shall we say, dox people that have been at the various Palestine protests.
Yep, I mean, they are literally doxing. This isn't one of the doxing tweets or posts, as they're now called. But they have actually been photographing people and then asking the public for information on those people so that they can further investigate their alleged offences. So this tweet by them in the last couple of days, the pro-Palestinian protesters set off from Bank Junction. As the march formed up, officers identified a man with a placard making comparisons between Israel and Nazi Germany. He's been arrested on suspicion of a racially aggravated public order offence. So let's have a look at this. There were a number of placards that were picked up by the Metropolitan Police as being offensive. This image is of civilian captives of the IOF inside Gaza. They were kidnapped from inside displaced people, refugee centres, schools and areas where they had taken shelter from the bombing in the north in particular. Many of them have been identified as civilians, as teachers, as local businessmen, journalists. More than 86 journalists have been killed since October the 7th by the IOF forces. And I just started to look into it. Many people were tweeting out various images relating to the image that you've just seen. But I actually looked at this on the Holocaust Encyclopedia, which talks about public humiliation, which I think, it can be compared very easily to the scene that you've just seen inside Gaza. And if you look at the bottom, the second point there in the key facts, humiliating incidents were intended to embarrass individuals as well as to deliver or reinforce lessons about Nazi racial ideology and power. Well, I struggled to see why it is not justified to make that comparison. And a recent article in Mondoweiss, an Israel-based media outlet, entitled, "I used to think the term Judeo-Nazis was excessive. I don't any longer," by Jonathan Ophir. It's an opinion piece. He talks about the late Professor Yeshayahu Leibovitz applied the term Judeo-Nazis back in the late 1980s when he referred to former Supreme Court Judge Meir Landau. He then says that basically at that time he thought it was a moral exaggeration. It was bad. Palestinians were being tortured systematically, but somehow I thought we're not quite as genocidal as the Nazis. And then he says, but today I feel differently. Yesterday, Jerusalem's deputy mayor, Aresh King, tweeted a photo of over 100 naked Palestinians who were kidnapped by the Israeli military in Gaza, handcuffed and sitting in the sand. There are reports that many were actually buried in the sand for some time and were then extricated. They were not left there until they died, but they were basically abused, tortured. King wrote that the IDF is exterminating the Nazi Muslims in Gaza and that we must up the tempo. If it were up to me, he added, I would bring 4 D9s, bulldozers, place them behind the sandy hills and give an order to bury all these hundreds of Nazis alive. They are not human beings and not even human animals. They are subhuman, and that is how they should be treated, King said. He ended by repeating Netanyahu's biblical Amalek genocidal reference, eradicate the memory of the Amalek, we will not forget. And then if you think that this only began from the 7th of October, Eva Bartlett, a journalist, a colleague of mine and a dear friend, put on her Telegram channel today her experience, I think, back in 2008-9 of similar goings on inside Gaza. And this was on 10th of July 2023 by Save the Children. Stripped, beaten and blindfolded, new research reveals ongoing violence and abuse of Palestinian children detained by Israeli military. So I leave it up to yourself and to the audience to decide whether it is justified to compare what the IOF is doing to Palestinians to what the Nazis did to Jews, to communists, to Romanis, to any of the minority groups.
And therefore, to compare whether it's appropriate for the Metropolitan Police to be doing what they're doing. What's your view on that?
Well, I think the area of anything that's deemed to be aggravated, particularly when it concerns race or religion, is very difficult. For police to interfere and therefore determine whether or not that is the case is endlessly problematic. But it's also one of those very subjective pieces of legislation which is open to so much abuse, both by police but also by people who are portraying themselves as victims.
Okay, so sticking with the police then,